And I discovered this because amongst my oxygen apparatus, I have an oxygen hyperbaric chamber. And doctors use this for healing, particularly for burn victims. And what it does is they require you to have 5 sessions a week, usually an hour, you can do it longer, for 8 weeks. And what is happening here is you're being depressed a little bit like underwater pressure to about 12 to 15 feet. But really what's happening is the level of oxygen has been pushed out of the cells in the body. And by bringing a saturation, and this helps with autistic children, they have a lot of toxicity and they burn that off with oxygen. And as a result of that, they're bringing back the life force. And when we do that, we open up to receive our true power, our true assistance from our higher self, our guides, angels, masters, deities. And we need to have that power because we're not alone and we really are not meant to do this alone. There's so much help if only we can accept it. So I felt that was important to mention, that we squeeze out our own life force. So
I
thank
agree.
you, Susan.
I'm glad you did that.
Thanks. Okay, my reading. Sometimes, if we are willing to pay attention, nature will show us who we are, wordlessly, and yet with an eloquence that forever changes the very configuration of our hearts. This happened to me on one ordinary blue-skied afternoon as I was driving home from an appointment on Highway 31 in eastern Ontario, Canada. I glanced over towards the frontage road running parallel to the highway and saw an oak tree that took my breath away. I didn't stop. I was late and skeptical of my reaction. I brushed it off. Yet years later, I still think of that tree. It was impossible not to notice it. It was standing all alone, stark against the horizon, in an otherwise completely open field. The first thing I thought was how magnificent she was, tall and graceful, a majestic grandmother oak with a proud and generous bearing. I could see birds, a quarrel of sparrows perhaps, flocking towards her, finding nurturance and respite in her open arms. But it was the other thing about her that gave me chills. The tree had incredibly twisted roots. I understate. The root system I could see coming out of the ground was more than twisted. It was tortured. I could not imagine what loud and awful chaos lay beneath the ground out of sight. Nor could I think what calamity or series of such had resulted in that moldering mess. And yet, despite her aberrant origin, that tree had grown to be beautifully straight and strong. In the roots of that tree, I saw my own beginnings. And in the wake of her shining example, I found a way to measure my life. Could I ever become as beautiful, straight, and true as she?
I love that. Was that the inspiration? Was that the inspiration for the title of the book and for the cover art of the book?
Yes, it was. And I felt I had to make the cover because I could not explain the cover to anybody.
Did you draw it?
Yes, I painted it.
Wow. Do you have the original art?
I do.
Oh, I think that's so special. I just think that's so special. I know that.
Did you see the female? Sorry, Suzanne.
Yes, I did.
Thank
yes,
you.
I did. I think you're so clever. I just really, when I read that story, I thought this has to be This just has to be the inspiration. And I know that our listeners are saying to themselves, where can we find the book? Easy. You can find it on Amazon. Simply go to the Amazon homepage, whether it's the American version or the European version of Amazon, and you're going to look at that search box on the very first, in the top of that big first page. It's very messy, I think, but there's a nice clean search box. Here is the title of Anne's book, and let me spell her name, and let me give you the specific.
It's just www.myname.com. That's one.
And what will they find when they go to that website?
They will find the book, Twisted Roots, and they'll also find Whispers of Grace, which is Volume 1 and Volume 2. On one side of the page is some of my artwork, and on the other are poems. I love to write poems.
Oh, you are quite the poet. I was very impressed with your poetry. It's very beautiful. Now let's send them to the other website as well, because that's where your artwork really is featured as well.
It's true. Without wasting too much time, the idea came in that today children bring home artwork from school and Mum pastes it on the refrigerator. Well, as a child, there were times we did not have a refrigerator. We had an icebox. And there wasn't we didn't have crayons and pencils to draw in my time. And so that's the idea. This second website just created was a fun website. And it was like, here, Mum, I'm pasting my artwork on the fridge.
I love it, because your artwork is beautiful, and I love the poems that you write with each one. And you've got it divided into sections. You have, if they go to the website, there's a color section, a sound section, and a movement section. And each one of those three sections has different pieces of artwork and different poems.
And that's because long ago, I put on an evening of expansion, and that's another story, but I discovered that my medium was sound, color, and movement. And that's how that came about. I've known a long time.
How interesting.
And we didn't say the website, which is, I don't think, which is The Spirit Dancers, www.thespiritdancers.com.
Excellent.
And it's there to create and motivate people to find their inner creative muse.
There are a couple of videos. I watched a video there that talks about the book. There are several different things there. I was really struck by the difference in the artwork and the amount of artwork, and how each category is slightly different, but there is a tie, there's a theme, there's a feeling that they all go together, they fit together, that they make sense together. Am I saying that in a correct way?
Well, it could be the subconscious working.
Could be.
May I give you a small piece of information?
Certainly.
We all know we make something like 36,000 decisions a day. But what I didn't know until recently, that 95 to 97% of our daily decisions are made from our subconscious. And if that's not a reason to go deeper into who we are and into our inner landscape, I don't know what is.
I agree. We are running out of time. And I want to give you an opportunity to say something to our listeners. Excuse me. This is your work. It's very personal work. It's about your trauma. It's about your healing. And it's all very, very personal. When the listeners buy a copy of the book and they read it, and they close the back cover, probably not for the last time, but let's say for the first time. What real takeaway do you want them to leave with after that initial read of the book?
I would like them to realize that this book is just the messenger from our Creator, and that they are in the perfect place to start or continue to explore their own inner landscape, to explore, and in the process, the journey of how to love yourself, because that's the greatest gift you can give yourself and anyone else, because when we love ourselves, that energy flows out boundlessly to everybody and everything in this world. It's who we are meant to be. It's to touch the divinity in each of us.
And such a powerful work. Thank you so very much for being our guest today on Books on Air and for sharing all of this wonderful information with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, it's my pleasure too. So when we find two pleasures, I think we must find bliss.
I think you're absolutely right. Remember, you can find Twisted Roots, Standing Tall, My Journey to Heal, Learn, and Rise from the Trauma of Childhood Sexual Abuse by Anne, A-N-N-E, Denada, D-E, capital N-A-D-A, on Amazon. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. I'm Suzanne Harris, and I hope you'll join us for the next Books on Air podcast, because remember, you never know who's going to be here, and you never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so much for listening.